Hello, everybody. This is Pow Barabajaggle, or Jean. Glenn Kellaway asked me a while ago to do a video that was all my autographs that I have. And that's kind of daunting because they're all over the place and I can't necessarily remember what I have. And some of them have been destroyed too. So let's just kind of do a free form. Maybe I found some of them kind of video. Um, so I think I mentioned in another video about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I had a flood here in the basement apartment where have been living the past 3 years. And, it wasn't that deep. It was about an inch of water everywhere, but I had some things that were sitting on the floor. And one of the things that got destroyed was my box of ticket stubs. Pretty much everything. I had to just toss it out. And I had been going to concerts since 1982 and kept probably 80% of the stubs. And a few of the stubs were autographed from being able to meet whoever I was seeing. Some of them were kind of major, like John Entwistle was one. And I met the Replacements, and that was a really funny one because it was Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson, and they were signing my ticket stub, but they were just kind of talking to me and my friend at the same time, so they were just kind of randomly writing words that they were replying back to me and Deanna. So it was funny, but it was, kind of special because it was weird. And I don't know, there's probably more in there, but overall, that wasn't really the worst of it. Just the John Entwistle one was bad. The good thing is that most of the time when I was getting an autograph, I was with my friend Rob Morgan, and he was getting the same autograph. So he has his ticket stub framed and everything in a different location. So that's good. He really is a far more intense collector than me. And he's really good about keeping his stuff safe. So the Rob archive far exceeds mine. And yeah, he was my ex-boyfriend, but we're really good friends. We've been friends since 1996 and still go see concerts semi-regularly, even though he's living a lot farther south of me and has a girlfriend, and she's cool with me and him being friends, knows that I'm like his best friend for years and years. So anyway, let's see, how do I start this? I have pulled some things going around the room trying to find autographs I remember. No doubt when this is over, I'll remember some more. But I know when I was a kid, I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if I met my idols, right? And then you always hear the, you're not supposed to meet your idols, you'll get disappointed thing. And yeah, sometimes it's fun. So glad I did what I did. But let's see, the first thing I guess that I would have had was I wrote a letter to the 3 O'Clock, who were a neo-psychedelic band in the early 1980s, and just wrote that I liked their album 16 Tambourines, and tried to say something nice about each member of the band. And I said that the drummer Danny Benair has a really cool shirt. And Danny Benair wrote me a letter back, which was very nice, and it was a whole page because I was saying stuff like, I liked that they did a cover of Lucifer Sam by Pink Floyd from the Syd Barrett era and stuff like that. So, he was cool and, appreciated that I liked his shirt. And then years later, I also met the 3 o'clock. Well, I met the 3 o'clock when I went to London, and they were playing in Brixton, and met them before the show then with my friend Lorraine. So they were all hanging out then. And then in 1989, they played a little club in Seattle. Oh, they played the Central Tavern. That's where it was. And their show hadn't sold well, so they jammed them into, I think, the Miracle Workers show, where they were the headliner then for the Miracle Workers. And the Miracle Workers were furious over that, and it was just a bad situation. And I got Michael Carcio, the lead singer's autograph then. And that was another thing that was destroyed in my box of ticket stubs. It was just on a little flyer for the show. So they were kind of the first band I guess I was meeting. And I was joining fan clubs. I joined the Who fan club in like 1982. And then they broke up in 1983, so it kind of sucked. But I had like a little pin that said The Who 1983, right? But I'd read fanzines and newsletters and stuff like that. So then I joined the R.E.M. fan club when I got into R.E.M. And I was in their fan club for a long time. I think it was probably somewhere in the 2000s, I've, quit doing the fan club, but I got most of the annual packages and newsletters and things like that. And early on, they would send out a 8x10 glossy that they signed. And then about 1987, 88, when they were getting big, again, they quit signing them. And Michael Stipe famously doesn't do autographs anymore. I think maybe he does some for charity or something like that. But I have here my fan club 1986 8x10 that's signed by all the members of R.E.M. You can see Mike Mills's, Peter Buck's, Bill Berry, and then Michael's is in really tiny print here under his name. It just says M. Stipe. So I think that's for document. And I swear I had another one somewhere in storage that's also signed. But I met R.E.M. for the first time. I saw them in 1985 in Pittsburgh. I went to visit my Who pen pal. Her name was Sid, and she and I would write back and forth. I met her through the Who fan club. And she was going to see this band that she and her friend Sue liked, R.E.M. And I had seen R.E.M. on a Nickelodeon show called Kids Are People, not Kids Are People Too. What was it called? Anyway, it's now a early TV clip that you can find. It was from 1984, and it was great. They were on this kids show, and they do a couple songs live, and then they sit down and are interviewed by these kids who don't necessarily know anything about R.E.M., so they're kind of asking funny questions. Though one of the Beastie Boys is there in the audience before the Beastie Boys really started, and he's an avid R.E.M. fan, and he's just thrilled to be there and trying to ask a couple of questions. So that's really great TV clip to see. But I got into them with the album Reckoning. I loved South Central Rain. It had Rickenbacker's 12 strings in it. It sounded 60s-ish. They were a different band to me compared to, classic rock radio, which wasn't called classic rock then. It was just AOR radio. But they didn't get played on it. But I started to find these bands through cable TV and MTV and stuff, and magazines. And I then really got into them by 1985. I went and saw them in Pittsburgh. The show just blew me away. The 3 o'clock were opening. That was the other thing. I really wanted to go because the 3 o'clock were opening. So I flew across the country to meet my pen pal. Went to this REM show. There was like an after show at a bar thing. And poor Sid and Sue, they were nice enough to take me around and said, we would go to this after show thing, but because you're underage, we aren't going to go. But so felt really bad because, of course, I wanted to go to that too. The next year, me and my friend Lorraine decided we were going to go to 3 REM shows in a row. And we went to Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC. And when we were going across the border in Vancouver, BC, we saw the tour bus parked there because they were stuck going through customs while their bus was getting searched. So they're all sitting there in the lobby looking really bored. And Lorraine, I'm really shy, at that point, especially as far as trying to meet somebody. So Lorraine goes stomping up to him, and we had brought this fanzine along with us just in case we ever met him to get signed. And it was a weird 1980 punk magazine that was called Rapid Eye Movement. And I'd found it at Mount Olympus Records in the fanzine section. And I always wondered, is this where R.E.M. got their name? It's got bands they like in it. It's got an interview with Wire. It's got an article about Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground. And I knew they were really into both of them. And it had this bizarre alien head on the cover. I'm like, this is something Michael Stipe would have liked, and probably they took their name from this. So Lorraine, my friend Lorraine, takes this fanzine and marches up to Michael and starts talking to him. Well, he's just sitting there, bored, looking over a counter, and he's really thrilled that here's this fan who showed up who wants to talk to them. So if you've ever heard him talk in person, he talks really low and quiet, and it's real bassy and monotone, and you can't really understand him very well unless you listen really close. He was a real mumbler. So at least he used to be. I don't know if he's changed much or what. Anyway, I couldn't hear at all what they were saying. I was just kind of petrified and glad that she was doing the work for me. And so they're talking, and I think he was kind of hoping that she'd just give him the fanzine because he kind of sat there and was reading it in front of her. And then she said that, would you sign it for me? And, oh, okay. And, he signs it right across the alien's head. It was really cool. And then he hands it down to the other guys. They all sign it and give it back to her, and she turns around and hands it to me. And suddenly, he's looking at me, and I say something like, "It's a bag!" And I kind of run out the door because I put it in the bag. Obviously, I gave away that I was petrified. So later at the show, we get there, and they're just showing up, and they do sound check, and they're waving at us and stuff, and they kind of did Femme Fatale and came over and sang it to us and everything at the show, because there was this weird situation where there'd been flood damage on the floor, so they kind of had to come down and play in the moat there. So we were right up front. And it was really fun. It was really fun back in 1986 before they were popular, because it was way more freeform, and all 3 of those shows had, much more of a spontaneous set list. I mean, they weren't the same shows. They had a pretty rotating set list at that point. They weren't doing like a video screen that they did a couple tours later for Green, where they were really tethered to a set list and videos that they were showing at the same time and all that. Anyway, way back when. So yeah, I at that time had this fanzine, But over the years, I gave that to Lorraine because she was the one who actually got it signed. You know, it was my fanzine, but I didn't do any of the work. So I've always been, I did meet Michael several times later too, and Peter, and, you know, I've seen him years over the years, but yeah, Peter Buck then later moved to Seattle, and he was part of the Minus Five, which was a band that featured Scott McCoy from the Young Fresh Fellows. And Scott and I kind of know each other, so because he was friends with my buddy Rob Morgan. And one time when I saw the Minus Five, I had them sign this EP that had just come out that I bought there at the show, and it was at the Tractor Tavern. The only thing is that EP was one of the things that got severely water damaged in the flood, but I was able to cut the autograph off the cover. So at the top you can see Peter Buck's autograph, and then you can see Scott said, "Hi Gene," and Tractor Tavern, and "No parrot available." I have parrots. Scott and I, so I had this bass guitar, and it was a fairly valuable bass guitar. And there was a parrot that I wanted to rescue, and he was kind of expensive. And I decided it's time to sell the bass guitar. Scott was willing to buy it from me for someone else, so I would have the $500 to rescue this parrot. And I have the parrot to this day, and I'm very glad I did that. I can always get a different bass guitar, even though that was a really cool bass guitar. So that's that story. That's why there's no parrot available. Okay, what else can I say? One of my favorite bands is NRBQ. A few years ago, John Perrin became the drummer in NRBQ, and he was a friend of Rob's as well. And we all saw Devo together, actually. John was up in Seattle, so we went and saw Devo, and then he wound up joining NRBQ after that. So a couple years ago, when NRBQ finally came back and played Seattle with John as the drummer, I wanted to get John's autograph on the new album, live album, that he was actually the drummer on. So there's John right there next to Terry in the purple. There's John. There's Terry. I could have probably gotten the whole thing signed. Of course, Rob did. That was not a problem. So Rob has the whole band's autographs from them, and that's fine. I still am a little weird about autographs. You know, it's something that you're imposing sometimes on these guys. And if it's somebody I know and they're cool with it, that's easy. And to some extent, it's also kind of ridiculous. Why am I asking this guy who I know to sign something? But it's also flattering, you know. So I think John thought it was cool that I'm asking him to sign it because, you know, specifically, I'm proud of him for getting in that band. He's a great drummer, and they're a great band. So let's see. Okay, I better get plugging along here. When I was in, I think, Boston, I met Suzanne Vega, and I had her sign this album, which was the new album at the time. And I also had her sign a book. And I don't really have my books here. They're in my storage space. But I have another really good autograph in my storage space, which is the book All the Rage by Ian McLagan of the Small Faces and the Faces, and, you know, he was playing with Billy Bragg when I saw him and met him and had him sign the book. Oh, that's right. I have Billy Bragg autographs too. Let me try and get those down. Excuse me. Yeah, alphabetically. We need to find that. Billy Bragg, here we go. So he had these soft cover releases, like this one, Bridges Not Walls. So he signed that one to me. And then I think this was from another tour. That's cool because that's his Burns guitar. I think that's just such a cool guitar. It's green burst. Didn't sign this one. Didn't sign this one, but these are all cool, you know, kind of live solo bootleg type things, and EPs. Okay, so there's those. Sometimes I'll get an autograph, and I didn't get the autograph myself. So that's always, is it really official or not? And I know this is official because it was at a Peter Wolf show. However, my parrot damaged it. I have a parrot named Sparty who likes to try and chew plastic. So that was, I had it in a little plastic sleeve, and that's what she went after. She figured, well, it's in plastic, that means there's food in there. So that just meant that I had to then go to Boston and go to the merch table in Boston and get this one to replace it, which is great because it's vinyl, it's sealed. He just, before the shows, he just goes and, you know, tears a little bit off so he can sign a bunch of albums for people to buy out there. Because he's just kind of, I think, not that comfortable meeting fans. Sometimes you go to shows and, you know, if you wait around after the show, they come out to the merch table and sign autographs for you. That's always one of the easier things. Just stay late at a smaller show because there's always the chance they're going to do that because they want to sell their merchandise and that kind of thing. Of course, you know, not always, but Martin Barr was doing that back before COVID. Rob got autographs from him then. And I mean, the Tubes always do it. Hang out after a show and you can, you know, oh, that's right. I've got a t-shirt that has Fee Waybull's autograph on it, though it's kind of fading. Prairie, do I have a Prairie autograph somewhere? I've met Prairie a lot. Prairie knows who I am because he was friends with Rob. Prairie's great. I really like Prairie Prince, the drummer of the Tubes. Often he's with Todd Rundgren too. I don't have a Todd Rundgren autograph around here, I don't think. I think maybe I had one at one point, and I know Rob probably has one, but yeah, my memory is not as good as it was. So then there's things like in stores, right? I am going to tell a story. One of the most memorable in stores for me was the Ramones playing in 1989. There's 88, 89. It was on the tour for Brain Drain. I was a big Ramones fan, especially in high school, and I saw them twice, but the first time I saw them, I didn't see the whole show because they were playing and somebody started throwing shoes at Dee Dee Ramone. And that's kind of like having a death wish. So Dee Dee took off his bass, threw it on the stage, and dove in the crowd and beat the guy up, got back on stage. They all went off in a huff. I thought that was the end of the show. My ride thought that was the end of the show. He wanted to drive back 80 miles to Enumclaw, where we lived. So he did. I found out they came back out half an hour later and did a full show, which kind of broke my heart because they were my favorite band at the time. Fortunately, I didn't find that out for years and years and years. But they came to Seattle again in 1989. I'm sure they came a couple years when I was out of town too, between 84 and 89. But when they showed up in 89, I was ready. I did something that probably wasn't very cool, and you learn from your mistakes. So I had my whole Ramones collection. I brought it with me to get it all signed. Found out I couldn't do that. So I had all my friends with me though, because I was like that. I was, like a missionary trying to get everybody to see my favorite band. And most of them wanted to see the Ramones anyway. So I had my little brother there. I had my best friends there. I don't know. I must have had, about 6 people with me or 7 people with me. Anyway, I just took all my albums and gave each of them one of my albums. And then I took my bootleg and my Dee Dee Ramone solo album, and that's what I went to get signed with. And having an artist sign a bootleg is not cool. But they were nice enough to just kind of raise their eyebrows and go ahead and do it for me. And I also slipped in the Dee Dee Ramone rap album that he had, and he was just thrilled to be signing it because, it was an embarrassment to the rest of the band, but he was proud to have somebody like his album and sign it. He got to sign it for him. But then, my friends all got their album signed. My brother was there. And ironically, a few years later, I got rid of my record collection because I went through a anti-materialism, loss of faith in rock and roll phase. So I sent my signed Ramones bootleg to my ex-boyfriend who lived in Athens, Georgia. And I'm sure he still has it. He's a big Ramones fan. But my little brother still had his autographed album that was mine. And that's what this is. So I got it back because my brother became a born-again Christian and issued rock and roll and all things I like. And so this is all of the members of the Ramones signing Rock and Roll High School. Joey dated his, so it says 89 near his signature. Let's see. Joey's is... I gotta look at this. There's Dee Dee. Johnny, here's Joey's. There's the 89 right there. Where's my hand? There. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's that story. And then another person I met at an in-store was Ray Davies. And here I took my copy of Return to Waterloo to be signed. It was kind of his first solo album, actually, I think. And he told me that the song I like on here, Voices in the Dark, he did with his daughter on that track. So that was cool. I didn't know that at the time. She sings the background vocals and stuff on it. But he was super nice. He was doing the Storyteller tour, and he was playing in Seattle for a week there at, I think, the Paramount Theater. I had tickets to 2 nights. I went with my current boyfriend and a past boyfriend. And then I think he came back on that same tour like a year or 2 later and pretty much told all the same stories. I saw it again. So I heard those stories a lot. It's a good tour, though. That was when X-Ray came out. The book X-Ray. Let's see, what else have I got here? Oh, yeah, I went through a pretty major J. Giles phase as I was showing you that, Peter Wolf autographs. So online I bought this, what was supposed to be, the whole band's autographs. But it just appears to be a reproduction, which is still pretty cool. You can tell when you look at Peter's autograph compared to the ones I got that it's the same. And then I also have Magic Dick's autograph here, and I had him sign that. I got this original master version of their second album. It had just come out new, and think ahead. If you want them to sign something that's black, get like a silver Sharpie. It'll show up better. Let's see, what else do I have? I met Reckless Eric in a little, like the second time he'd come to Seattle to play, and I brought this 45 I had from one of his early albums, Broken Doll, back on Stiff Records. So he signed a whole bunch of stuff on this. It says Gene, Seattle, December 2009, Merry Christmas, etc. Love, Reckless Eric, XXX. He's great. I really think he's an underrated artist. My boyfriend Mark was really into Husker Du, and he met Grant Hart and Bob Mould a number of times. He kind of went through a disillusionment with Bob, but he always liked Grant. So at one point, he purged his collection of his Bob autographed stuff. So I took his two Husker Du 45s that were signed by Bob Mould, which is this 8 Miles High one, and this Makes No Sense at All 45. And then, as far as Grant, when he was in Minneapolis and visited Grant and saw some live shows, Grant gave him a woodblock painting that he'd made. So this is a Grant Hart original woodblock painting. I'm sure it's signed, but I had it framed so you can't see the autograph. And Mark had lots of Grant stuff. So let's see, who have I forgotten? I think that's most of it, except I also have Lou Reed's autograph on Berlin here in silver. Can you even see it? It's right on the green part here, but it didn't show up that well. But this was when Berlin was re-released, so this was sometime in the 2000s. That was a kind of funny one, too. He did an in-store at Easy Street Records in Seattle, and I took my CD up to get it signed and handed it to him, and I didn't say anything because I was, shy. And I kind of thought maybe I could get away with not saying anything, but he signed it, and then he went to give it back to me, and he wouldn't let go. I had to say something. So I said, I'm really a big fan of Berlin, and thank you for signing it for me, and I really wanted to see you back in 1989 when you toured New York, but I didn't have, I wasn't able to go to the show, so I finally got to see you at Bumbershoot like last year, and the Edgar Allan Poe album is really great, and something like that, and he just kind of grinned and let me have my CD back. So, yeah, I know there's others I've forgotten. I when I was telling that story about the bootlegs, I was going to say I also met Paul Westerberg from the Replacements and had a CD that I don't have anymore autographed. I went through another purge and somehow I don't have that one. That I wish I did. I did not mean to get rid of that. I think it was accidental. But I was in line at Easy Street again to get that current album autographed, and the guy ahead of me had a Replacements bootleg. And somebody next to him said, he's not going to sign a bootleg. You don't want to try and get him to sign that bootleg. And the guy was just a hard-headed idiot, so he was going to have him sign it. I think he was probably going to try and sell it later, too. That was the impression I was getting off this guy. So he goes up there to Paul Westerberg and hands him the booklet. And Paul Westerberg looks at him and hands it right back. And then he hands it back to him, and he just takes his Sharpie and writes a big X on it and hands it back to him. So, yeah, I've always collected bootlegs. Not like that's not the main thing I collect. You know, I understand that you know, the artist isn't making money, but it's usually going to be someone who I have their whole catalog already anyway, and if it's something that's interesting or cool, I might pick it up. That's the kind of thing I used to go to record conventions and get, would be Who bootlegs or R.E.M. bootlegs. But I also did tape trading. One of my boyfriends, two of my boyfriends were tape traders and tape recorders at shows and things like that. So I'm a little neutral on it, but of course I don't like the situation where, you know, an artist is getting ripped off. You know, I'm gonna buy the regular releases. I'm not just gonna have a shitty live album, you know. Anyway. Yeah, so some of the things that got destroyed in the flood here were my bootleg collection, which, oh well, you know, there were some cool things in there, and they're hard to replace, but, you know, I've got so much other cool stuff, it's fine. Okay, I think I have to wrap this up. What are we, we're running 37 minutes. Well, thanks anybody who's still here for listening to my meandering stories, and have a good evening. Bye.